So I'm going to tell you a few really nice stories. I live in Israel that just make me love Israel more and more. This frustration embedded in the stories, but I think it's just nice. So I'm going to wait a few more minutes for people to sign on, and you guys are lucky to get these stories. So I was on the phone the other day with someone that's he deals with my pensions. I'm saving money, you know, for when I get older. So he's dealing with it, and it's just, I need all these forms, and it's just so hard to get the forms. Like I go on the website, and then they have a number, and I call the number, but the number is a recording that says that doesn't help you. So you just want to scream in situations like this. Just nothing. There's nothing I could do, and the guy doesn't know what to do either. So I talked to him, and I'm complaining about it. I'm like, is it because my issue is that complicated, or because it's just Israel? So he's like, Adam, we shouldn't say bad things about the country that we love. I said, you know what? You're right. I love Israel. Okay. Then today I was on the phone with my bank. Now, that's one of the things that I dread doing, is talking to the bank, because in America, the websites, at least Chase, I think, it's very clear and not so many words popping at you on the page. It's just very easy. You call up on the phone, they answer after the first ring. It's very nice and smooth. Here, you call up on the phone. Now, you can't even get a person because you need a secret code, but how do I know what my secret code is? I don't know what my code is. So then I have to figure out what my secret code is. Then finally, someone answers. And I asked a few very simple questions. And then I started complaining to him. I said, you know, do you have an account in America? He goes, no, I was in America when I was 10. And it's funny also that you sit and discuss these like personal stories with the guy at the bank. This is all on the phone. So then he tells me, so I said, you know, in America, when you walk into a bank, they're all wearing suits and ties, and no one would ever dream of answering their cell phone as they're having a meeting with you. You know, you walk in, they greet you, you sit in this private booth, and here you go in and you need to do something, and they answer the phone, and they, oh, 1 second, my daughter's calling. Like, you can't do that. And then I was like, and this is what I got annoyed about. And I already knew this. Now, the larger message is I love Israel. I mean, you'll hear from the end of the story too. So then I go, you know, and it makes me so upset, even if it's only a quarter that you're taking from me, that in Israel, every time you do a transaction, if you take money out of the ATM, even if it's your bank's ATM, or if someone transfers you money, you transfer someone money, you have to pay. You have to pay for everything here. And I go, you know, in America, you don't have to pay. And the fact that you have to pay here, it's so frustrating. Plus, also another thing that people say is that you're supposed to negotiate with the bank. What does that mean, negotiate with the bank? Negotiate with the bank, hey, don't charge me or I'm leaving. And I don't like threats either. So that I'm being all frustrated. And then I told him, I said, you know what though? I'm just going to stop myself because I chose to move here and I love Israel. So he goes, Ken, and I love it. So, and then I hung up and smiling because I thought it was nice how even the guy at the bank is agreeing with me how great Israel is. So it's just a really nice experience, because in my beautiful, peaceful experiences with bankers in America, we never ended a conversation talking about how amazing Israel was. So I really appreciate these little things. So short little anecdotes. The last thing I'm going to say before we start, this is well, I'll tell the story. You can make your own conclusion. So Corona is going up in Israel as it is around the world, and they're very, very, very strict on the mask stories. On masks, if you don't wear a mask, you get fined. It was $150. I mean, it was about 50, and now they doubled it. So last night I was out with a friend, and we were walking around, and my mask was like on my nose, and my friend's mask, she was holding it in her hand, and 2 cops came and gave her a ticket, and I didn't get one, thank God. But it was like, wow. So here, if you don't wear a mask and if you walk around without masks, then you will get fined. Anyway, I'm gonna stop now with my sharing just general nice stories about living in Israel. As you see behind me, the sun is shining, it's gorgeous. It's really the best country. And I hope that after today's Zoom, you guys will love Israel even more than you already do and see how amazing it is. I don't know how many of you know what the topic is. Well, you'll see as we get along. I'm going to share my screen with you. And I want to thank you all for coming and starting out your Monday morning at 10 in the morning to learn about Israel. Really, kol hakavod to you for joining. And I am so excited to be here. I look forward all week to this. And then when the Zoom is over, I look forward to next week's Zoom. Okay, here we go. No, that's not what I need. Okay, here. Okay. About 10 years ago, Wikipedia, which is the free encyclopedia that we all love, the one that teachers say you can't really use it, it doesn't count as a source, yet it's the best source ever. Wikipedia had a contest. And what was the contest that they ran? The contest was, if you guys look at this picture on the screen, you see in the background, there's a building with a flag on top. That's the Knesset, is Israel's parliamentary building. And in the front of the picture, to the left of the screen, over here, you guys see a huge menorah. It's 14 feet tall, 18,000 pounds, made of bronze. And if I zoom into the menorah, you guys see that there's different inscriptions and things engraved on it. Now, in 1956, when this was presented to the state of Israel as a gift, and in a few minutes I'm going to talk about why, who, I'm sure they knew what the symbols meant. However, over the years it was lost, and Wikipedia decided, you know what, we want someone to figure it out. What are all these strange engravings? What do they mean? And there was a woman named Tamar Hayardeni, who was also a tour guide, and she taught me a lot of things that I know, including what I'm about to tell you. She's fantastic, and she loved contests, and she also loves Wikipedia. She's always writing pages for Wikipedia. She said, I'm going to win this contest. So she went to the National Library, and she started researching, and she actually found a piece of paper in the handwriting of the artist, and he explained what the different inscriptions were on the menorah. And what did she find? So what she found, I'm gonna hold for a minute because I want to tell you the plan for this week's Zoom, for today's Zoom. So we are going to take a journey looking at different menorah, 6 menorah, some in Israel, some in not. And the overarching question that we're going to ask ourselves is, so journey 6 menorah, what did the menorah look like in the time of the Beit HaMikdash? Okay, so that's going to be our focus question. In 1948, Israel got its independence, and there's this man, his name is Edwin Samuel. He was the son of a British, official title is High Commissioner, and he decided, I want to give this new state a present. So in 1950, he decided that he wanted to give the state a present, and he goes, what should I give Israel? I know, I want to give them a menorah, and not just any menorah. I want it to be a very Jewish menorah. So he turned to the man who you see in the picture on the right, in the coat. His name is Beno Elkin. And he said, I want you to design me a menorah. Now, Beno Elkin, he had experience in designing menorah. He wasn't a random person. He had designed the menorah in the past for Westminster Church. So Edwin Samuel turns to him and says, design me a menorah. And it took him 8 years to design the menorah that you see behind him or on the left. And 6 of the 8 years were dedicated to research. What was he researching? He was researching the history of Israel. And only 2 of them were for the actual work. And what he finished with was 30 different scenes that he believed represented the history of the Jewish people. Now, like we saw I'm going to go back for a second, the picture over here, it's right near the Knesset. If you've ever seen this menorah, then amazing. If not, now you can add to your running list that I give every week of new places to visit in Israel. It is a super impressive menorah. Around Shavuot, I was with a friend. I live very close to the Knesset. I could almost see it outside from my balcony. There's another square building that I could see, and every time people come over and they look out, they go, "Oh, that's the Knesset," because they want to show that they know it's not the Knesset. I live near the Knesset, and I actually take myself for a walk a few times every day. And on my walk, I see the Knesset. So I was with a friend, and we were going to. I said, "You want to go see the menorah?" She said, "Sure." And then, of course, the guard asked us, the Anut, and we said we're going to see the menorah, and he let us go. And when I looked at the menorah, so I tried to figure out what the scenes were. Some of them I could do, most of them I couldn't. And I go, if it wasn't Shabbat, then I could Wikipedia it, quickly see what everything is, or at home, I have notes on what this is. I said, if only I brought my notes with me, and it gave me this motivation to learn it now. So one of the things I'm going to do with you now is not all 30 scenes, but some of them I'm going to show you what they are. First, I'm going to have you guess, and then I'm going to show you them. And then your next trip to Israel, when you see it, you will know. And of course, you could also confirm on Wikipedia. You see what it is. Okay. So you see on the left that the engravings, the protrusions protruding out of the menorah. So what did he make? And I also want to add in, before I show you what it is, that it was really, really nice that the British government, who ultimately presented this Menorah to the state of Israel, did that, because in the UN vote in 1947, when they were voting should Israel be a state or not, Britain abstained. They didn't vote yes, they didn't vote no. So here it kind of closed the circle in a nice way. It's almost showing we agree with your government by giving them this present. Okay. So here is the Menorah, and we're going to zoom in to the first and seven. Wait, to the middle kaneh, the middle branch of the Menorah, is the most important one. The most important scenes are on it, and something that Tamar figured out is the rest of the branches, they parallel. What's on the first one, what's on the last one, they parallel, and that's how it works. So if we look all the way at the top, branch number 1 and branch number 7, we see 2 scenarios. Now, if anyone is, I won't be able to hear you if you figure out what it is. You could write it in the chat, but I might say the answer before you. Hi, Isaac, Tidia. You might, I might say the answer before you write it in the chat. But anyway, these are the first 2. These are 2 Nevi'im. We have Yeshayahu versus Yirmiyahu. Why? Because Yeshayahu is the Navi of Nechama, of consolation. Yirmiyahu is Navi of the Chorban. His Nevi'im, his Nebu'ot are destruction, and it's actually really appropriate to be bringing up Yirmiyahu because we have the fast day coming up on Thursday, and a lot of information we have comes from Sefer Yirmiyahu. Next one. If you could figure out, you're a genius. I couldn't figure it out. And I also want to say that the view you're getting now is a better view than you'll get if you see it in person, because you saw that there was a gate around it, so it's hard to see. So this is really zoomed in view. What this is, we have, and it's fun to figure out why he picked those 2, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai and Hamakabim. Why? Well, both of these people, what they had in common is that they fought. The Maccabim, we know in the story of Chanukah, they fought against the Yevanim. And Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, if you look at the top of his picture, you see a pillar. This is the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Oh, also, I didn't even plan it, but this also connects to the fast day coming up. Before the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he knew it was going to happen. So he told the Romans this very famous line, please give me the city of Yavna. I want to rebuild the Jewish people. And why are they paralleled against each other? Because the Maccabees, they fought with, physically, and Rabban Yochanan, the way he fought was through negotiations. Now we're not doing all 30 scenes, so we're moving now inwards to branches 2 and 6. And we have, okay, this one I love. It's so creative. And if I was designing a Menorah, I would not think of putting these people on it. Certainly not the one on the right. We're going to start with the one on the left. Oh, okay, they came up at the same time. So we have Ezra HaSofed and Hillel HaZaken. So Ezra HaSofed, after the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, he returns with the Jews from Babel to Eretz Israel. And he helps a lot of the things that we have today. A lot of the halachot, he helps enact. He makes an order to things. Reading the Torah Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. That's from Ezra HaSofed. And next time we have a Hillel HaZaken. Now I want you guys to notice there's a man who is on the right standing. Notice that he's standing on one leg, right? Why is he standing on one leg? So if you guys know, there's a very, very famous story in the Gemara in Masachet Shabbat, where a man comes up to Hillel HaZaken and says, teach me the whole Torah on one leg. And Hillel HaZaken answers, what is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. That's the Torah on one leg. Now, explaining the Torah like that, it's a very flexible approach. There's kindness involved. Versus Ezra HaSofed, who is strict, the letter of the law. This is what the law says. This is what you do. You're intermarried. Get rid of your wives. Very, very strict. And Hillel is a more flexible, loving approach. So those 2 people parallel. I thought that was a very creative one. Another one. So some people might be able to identify the one on the left. So we see a man holding up a huge head, and we see a crown. That is David when he's fighting Goliath. And what we have on the other side is Bar Kochba. Again, Fortunately, there's a lot of destruction in Am Yisrael's history. So almost everything has to do with destruction, because Bar Kochva also, after the second Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, he rebelled against the Romans unsuccessfully, which is the point of why he's brought here. David HaMelech fought Goliath, the giant. He's successful. He's the king. And Bar Kochva fought, but he was unsuccessful. Now, Rabbi Akiva, who was alive at the time, he thought Bar Kochva was the Mashiach. We just read in Parashat Balak that it says Balaam in his curses, he says Darach Kochav miYaakov, and from that pasuk, and his name Rabbi Akiva said Bar Kochva, you are the Mashiach, and we know that the Mashiach is supposed to come from David HaMelech, so that's another similarity. We have a few more, and then we're going to move on to another menorah. Okay, we have here. This, I really also love this idea, but it's just so hard to figure out what it is. No wonder why Wikipedia to run a contest. We see on the left, we see a ship, and there's people in the ship. One of them is in a symbol of strength. Others look pretty weak. And then on the right, we see people that have their hands up, hoping, praying something. What this is Meshichiyut, Messianism versus Ha'apala. What's Ha'apala? When after the Holocaust, the British really limited the amount of Jewish people that could come into Eretz Yisrael. And they had something called the Ha'apala, where these ships would just come with Holocaust refugees trying to sneak into Israel. Now, to do that, that's a very, very active stance in the Jewish people getting what they want. As opposed to the right, Meshichiyut, when you're hoping and praying for the Mashiach, which is more passive. You pray and you're hoping, are you actively doing something? So the parallelism of passively doing something versus actively doing something, that's what he showed on branches 3 and 5. Now I want to go to the middle branch, which you said is the most important, and the first one you might be able to figure out. Now also, what I learned in learning this is that Adele, you really need to be very up on your Tanakh and on your Jewish history, because if you're not, then you don't even know what he's referring to. And okay, so here's the middle branch. The first one, for those of you that are familiar with Sefer Shemot, we have Moshe Rabbeinu with his hands in the air, and Aaron and Hur are holding his hands up on the side. And he's fighting Amalek. And Rashi comments that what's the point? Are Moshe's hands winning or losing the war? No, but rather when Moshe had his hands up in the air, Bnei Yisrael would look at him, and they would get hope, and they would have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is a symbol to how we fight our wars in Eretz Yisrael today, that we know when we rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us and can help us. So that this war with the first enemy of Amalek that we're eternally fighting is the top of the middle branch, Moshe b'Mechamet Amalek. Next, we have, anyone can identify this one? Yes, you're right, it's the 10 Commandments. Next one, okay, this one is so hard. I've never put these two people together, but we have on the right a woman, and she's carrying, so I'm going to try to give you hints, and you can guess at the screen if you think you know what it is. So we have a woman, and she's carrying these bundles of wheat in her hands. What throws me off is the picture on the left, because I completely don't see the connection. But the woman holding the wheat should remind you of Ruth, because that's Ruth from Megillat Ruth. And below, the woman who looks like she's in pain and suffering is Rachel Imenu. What's the connection? We have here, Ruth is comforting Rachel Imenu. Ruth here, she symbolizes monarchy. We know David HaMelech came from her, versus Rachel Imenu, who is crying, what represents barrenness. And why is she crying? Because Bnei Yisrael was sent into Galut, and Ruth is comforting her, don't worry. So that's another key event. This one, also kind of hard, but maybe you can figure it out. If you look at the bottom, you see people, you see skeletons, and might remind you of the Holocaust, which is a very good guess because it's not the Holocaust, but this is Yehezkel's vision of dried bones. In Sefer Yehezkel, Hashem tells, Yehezkel sees this valley filled with bones, and Hashem tells him, make a prophecy about it, and he says, God, you know. And then he says, eventually, all the bones are going to get together, and then there's going to be skin on it, and there's going to be a ruach chaya. So that is really, if we're taking the Holocaust, which was a few years before the state of Israel's founding, all of a sudden we have the state of Israel again. So, I didn't even say the name of the artist who made it. His name was Beno Elkin. So Beno Elkin felt that was an important point. We have two more. This one is the Holocaust. It's the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And I want you guys to notice the person in the middle whose face is turned up towards the sky with a Jewish star. This is the artist. He drew himself on it. He actually ran away from Germany to Britain, and his face is up for a very specific reason. Remember that. I'm not going to tell you the reason yet, but just notice how his face is up. And also notice that as we were looking at a lot of the inscriptions, it was a little bit hard to tell, and sometimes it's exaggerated, different parts of their body. So I want you to keep that in mind. We're going to answer that in a minute. Shema Israel, of course, foundation of the Jewish people. Here we have the founding of the state. A pasuk from Sefer Zechariah talking about the strength comes from God's Spirit, the 12 Shevatim. And here is the Menorah. Now, you guys, you could see if you look at the middle that you recognize what they are. Next trip to Israel, hopefully, which will be very soon, take a visit, and it'll be really fun for you guys that you now can identify these symbols. So the story, you would think he gives a present, Menorah, everyone's happy, fine. But things in Israel don't really work like that. It's not here's a present, enjoy. There's a lot of juicy details that happened along the way, which I'm going to share with you now. The first is originally when Beno Elkin made the Menorah, his plan was that it should be indoors and the only source of light should be from a skylight on the top. Now we're going to pause for a minute. I read this really great book earlier this year called The Sistine Secrets. It was talking about the art in the Sistine Chapel, which is in the Vatican in Rome. And something that the author said is, in order to understand the work of art, you need to know where the work of art was supposed to be. And Michelangelo, he made this very, very famous statue of Moses. And in the statue, Moses has horns. Now, if you do a Google search, and I tried it, or just from your general knowledge, most people say the reason why Moses' statue has horns is because it says in the Torah that when Moshe came down from Har Sinai, Karan or Panav, the skin of his face was shining. Karan is like Keren, so they misinterpreted it and he made horns. They said it's a misinterpretation. The authors argue, they said it's not a misinterpretation, and it happens to be Michelangelo really knew his Bible really well. They said the reason why Moses had horns is because this statue was supposed to be all the way high up on a church. And based on the angle where it was originally supposed to be hung, not in a museum today where we see it flat on, when the sun would shine on the statue, the horns would be a visual effect that played with the light, and it would literally light up. So that was the reason why he did it. Now, I'm telling you this story because Beno Elkin, in designing the Menorah, had the same exact plan in mind. I said, I want you guys to notice that his face is turned up. Why? Because if the sun was really going to shine in as he planned it, and it was going to be in a dark room just with the skylight, then his face would be shining, and a lot of the effects we saw that were hard for us to see, if we saw it the way we're supposed to, it would be much more clear and we'd be amazed and dazzled. I think it's still amazing, but that's just something to know that his original intention was for it to be inside. So what is it doing outside? So great story behind why it's outside. As the Menorah was being created, some of the religious people, they said, hey, there are halachic issues with this Menorah. It's not so simple. What were the issues? They said, one, it said in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, it says that people are not allowed to make the kelim, they're not allowed to copy the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash exactly the way it is. If you want to make a menorah and make 5 branches or 6 or 8 or 9, fine. But of 7, you can't do. Now, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they said, hey, you're copying the kelim of the menorah. That was problem number 1. Problem number 2, it says in the 10 Commandments, which is on the menorah, that you should not make a statue, an idol. This is exactly it. We cannot accept this menorah. No good. So what they did, they then sent the man who was the chief rabbi at the time, Rab Herzog, to visit the menorah. He went to London. This is a picture of him. And he gave his kosher stamp of approval on the menorah. He said, it's fine. And he had 2 conditions. He said, 1, the kanim on top should be flat, so you can't light it. And they were flat. And he said, 2, the inscriptions, don't make them 3D, like all the way completely coming out, and then it's not a statue. Okay, so everything's fine, except everything's not fine. Why? First, we have the religious people that are upset about it, and now, who's the next group of people that's going to be upset? the Chilonim are upset. They said, we don't want a religious symbols in government. We're not accepting this. This is the parliament, it's a democracy, and now you're bringing this religious menorah to put inside. We don't want it. Now, it's a bit of a problem because one, this is a gift. You don't just say no to a gift. And two, it's worth about $500,000. So what do you do? So they're thinking, and they said, you know what? Why don't we put it outside? Because then, you know, the religious people will calm down and the non-religious people will calm down. It's not in the government building, it's outside it. And the Knesset, where it stands there in the picture I showed you at the start, so that's not where it was. The Knesset actually moved a few times. It was in the center of town originally, and we see here the menorah is outside. And when they spoke to Britain, they said, you know, this is a temporary Knesset, and we don't really have room, so it's outside. But when we move to the permanent Knesset, it'll be indoors. Okay. And now we're moving to the permanent Knesset, but it's still outdoors. And they promise it'll be indoors. So what do they say now? You know, it's so beautiful, this gift that you gave us, that we want to keep it outdoors so everybody could see it. Because if it's inside, less people could see it. But we want the people of Yerushalayim to really, really fully enjoy it. So we're going to leave it outside. Very nice cover. Until today, the menorah stands outside for all of us to enjoy. And that is the story of the menorah of the Knesset. Now, I want to go back to a question that I asked in the beginning, was what did the menorah look like in the time of the Beit HaMikdash? So, in order to answer that question, we are going to go visit a menorah in the Old City. This menorah originally was by the steps on the way to the Kotel, and they moved it for a really good reason that, believe it or not, they're actually planning on building an elevator. The Kotel is very hard to get to. It's very inaccessible. So if you have an elevator, it helps. Always like when you're going to visit, well, really on the way back, you see a million steps, and it's like, oh my God, it's so many steps. So they're building an elevator. Let's see when it will actually be done. I haven't, in all the times that I've been there, I haven't seen anyone working on it actively, but hopefully it'll be done. So right now, the menorah, they moved to right near the Churva Shul, if you guys are familiar with that, like center square. Few things that you notice when you look at the menorah. First of all, it's encased by glass. This glass is bulletproof. There's also a camera. It's being watched 24/7. This menorah weighs 1,000 pounds. The menorah by the Knesset weighed 8,000 pounds. This one weighs 1,000 pounds. It is worth about $4 million. And it's not pure gold. It's bronze inside, covered with covered with layer of gold. And the amount of gold, so I want you guys to picture two 50-pound suitcases. You know, you're coming to Israel and you're allowed to bring 2 suitcases. You're bringing 2, and all you have in your suitcases is gold. So that's the amount of gold that is on it. Now, I mentioned earlier that you are not allowed to you're not allowed to copy the Kilim of the Beit HaMikdash. And here, this pretty much looks like it. And the reason is because this is exactly the intention. There is this institute called Machon HaMikdash, or the Temple Institute. If you have not been there, highly recommend. It is the coolest place ever. You literally see the Kilim of the Beit HaMikdash. And that's their point. They said, you know, we can't wait for the Beit HaMikdash to fall from the sky. We need to build the Beit HaMikdash. And when we build it, we need to be ready. And we need to have the Kelim. So they built this menorah specifically with the goal of using it in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, if you're investing in something that's $4 million, you're obviously going to do your research. So they did tons and tons and tons and tons of research before, and they determined based on their studies that this is what they think the menorah of the Beit HaMikdash looked like. And I want to zoom in a little bit, because if we want to know what the menorah of the Beit HaMikdash looked like, well, first of all, we need to go to the first time the description is mentioned, which is in the Torah, in Sefer Shemot. Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe to make a menorah, and he says, Zahav tahor miksha. Miksha means 1 piece of gold. Now, I said this is not 1 piece of gold, this is bronze with gold, so already they're not following the rules, except the way they got the gold on. I don't know what the name of the technology is. It was like complicated for me to remember, but they actually immersed the menorah in water, and then they had some kind of technology where they zapped the gold on. And because it was all zapped on at the same time, it's considered that it's made of 1 piece of gold. Now, the next line, we have Givi'aha, Kaftoreha, Ufracheha. There were 3 decorations that were on the menorah. Givi'im, we see on the left, or on the actual menorah, which is kind of like a cup. Then you have Kaftorim, which are these knobs you could also see, and Prachim, and flowers, and the Torah lists how many should be on each one. Right, so this is the description. Now, some of you might have seen pictures of menorot where the kanim are straight, where they straight around. The Torah doesn't say. So how could we figure out? Well, if we could find the most ancient source, then maybe we could figure it out. So a really, really important source for figuring out if it's straight or round is this. Harambam, in his notes, handwritten notes, we found the sketch where he draws the menorah, and we see the decorations that he has on all the kanim. And he also, the way he does it is he says, they're straight. Okay, what about, are there any other proofs? What if we would go back even further? What could we find? So we are going to now look at some examples from archaeology where the menorot found in archaeology that we could use to base these things on. If we go to shuls from the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara, which are abundant in Israel, you see here I chose 4 examples. The way they would decorate the shuls is they would make these mosaic floors, and they almost always chose a menorah. Menorah is a very ancient symbol of representing Judaism. And notice all the kanim of the menorah are rounded. Every single picture. We have a Bet Knesset in Yericha, Tveria, Ma'on, which is a place down south, Sipori. We see in some of them, the more intricate it is, the decorations on it, as the Pesukim state, but they're all rounded. What else do we have? Even earlier than that, because we said that was the times of Mishnah and Gemara, the Chashmonaim, Second Temple period, we found a coin with the menorah. Notice it's rounded. And if we look at the Israeli coins we have today, 10 agurot, which is, I think, worth less than a penny, or maybe a penny, also has the menorah on it based on this. But there is something, and I'm about to show you, and you guys are so lucky to know this. The earliest example of the menorah ever found, which dates back the earliest, is in 1967. We got control of the old city, and after the 6-day war, the Jordanians are no longer there. And when we get to the old city, we see that it's destroyed. The Jordanians destroyed everything. Now, a plus from the destruction was, okay, let's excavate, let's clean up. And we made a lot of really nice discoveries specifically because of the destruction of the Jordanians. And what was found near the Chomar Chava, the wide wall that Yehezkel built, if anyone's familiar with that. If not, tune in Thursday for the SCA's all-day learning day. I'm going to be talking about it. They found it on a piece of plaster, a drawing of the menorah, and it dates back to the time of the second Beit HaMikdash. Now, why is this super, super exciting? Because most likely, the person that drew this menorah was somebody that saw the menorah with his own eyes. And he saw the menorah, and he decided on his wall to inscribe it. And we see also in his menorah, we see the decorations. If you guys look to the right, there's these squarish things. That is the shulchan. And this is the earliest dated finding we have of what the menorah might have looked like. Now, there is a menorah that I did not talk about yet, which a lot of you might know because it's very, very famous. And you're like, well, what about this one? Why didn't you talk about that one? I'm going to talk about that one right now. So this is from the time of the Second Temple. Oh, wait. Before that, like, super famous menorah, there's something I want you to see first. Okay, I want you guys to look at the 4 pictures you see, and I want you to look at the picture in the middle and try to see if you could spot the difference. All 4 have something in common, and the one in the middle doesn't. Now, if we look at the branches of the menorah, they all have rounded branches, which, as we said, it's good. It helps us prove what it is. Look carefully. Okay. What they all have in common, and this menorah does not, is they all have 3 legs. Anytime we find an ancient menorah inscribed, it always has 3 legs. Now, the Torah doesn't say in the Pesukim that it needs to have 3 legs, but if every single drawing has 3 legs, then most probably it had 3 legs. It's a Mesorah that's passed down. Now, when this menorah is from the Temple Institute, and I mentioned they did so much research, and for whatever reason, the base they chose not to do 3 legs. Why not? What were they basing their menorah on? Now, there is only one other menorah that I know of, which is very, very famous and also dates back to the time of the Second Temple. After the Second Temple was destroyed, it dates back to 70. Temple was destroyed in 70, and this dates back to 71. An inscription of people that saw the menorah. And the base that they use is not one of 3 legs. The base they use is the one that you see in the center. Where am I taking you? Yes, I'm taking you to Rome, to the Arch of Titus. You guys see the menorah being carried. Here's another picture of it where it's a little bit brighter. Those are Roman soldiers. They're carrying their spoils of war. The Arch of Titus was an arch built in honor of Titus or Titus, who destroyed the second Beit HaMikdash, to commemorate his victory. And the Romans are proudly, what they would do is they march through the arch proudly, and they're carrying here the menorah and the kilim. Now, I always thought the Arch of Titus was this little tiny thing. I couldn't help it. I went to Rome in February, right before Corona. I actually Googled Corona. It was only in China at that point. So I got to Rome. The more I learned history, the more I wanted to see the Arch of Titus, because I said, I talk about it, and when I give tours in the old city, and I talk about the golden menorah, I show people a picture of the Arch of Titus, because I show them the base of it, that the base is similar. And I'm like, I want to finally go. So here I am. And I really always thought it was this little tiny thing that you can only see if you have a camera, but you guys see how big it is. I'm standing right under it. And here's another picture. I went with 2 friends. You see the menorah to the right. That is what it looks like. And here is the whole arch. And I highlighted the area where it is. Now, really, really, really cool thing. In 2012, there was this team of professors, researchers, I'm not exactly sure what they are. One of them from Yeshiva University. And they said, I wonder what the Arch of Titus would look like in color. Now, it wasn't them they were putting the color on, because originally there was color on it. Most of the statues, I'm not going to say all because I don't know if it's true, but most of them had color. And just over time, the color wears away. And imagine, look at how pretty, it's so pretty with color. And they want to know what were the original colors on this section of the arch. And the way they figured it out was they took this UV lights, they shined it on it, and then they took pictures, and then they took this white light, and they tried to see they put on areas where they thought there would be color pigment, and then based on the reflection, because certain colors reflect that more strongly than others, they were able to figure out what the original colors were. If you're interested in the technology, you could find a YouTube video on it where they explain it. And what they found was that the color on the menorah was a color called yellow ochre, which gives us even more proof. We know the Torah says zahav, that the menorah is made out of gold, and we see that based on their research that it was yellow, which is perfect if they're trying to make gold. Other things you see in the picture, you notice to the right of the menorah, the shulchan and the chatzotzrot. So the Romans are proudly marching this through. Okay. Where else is this menorah from the Arch of Titus used? So this question is testing how up you are on Israeli symbols. I want to tell you about another contest. And this is also the last menorah that we're going to be talking about. In 1948, there was a contest. The contest is for the State of Israel symbol design. Now, there were 2 rules. 1, it must have at least the colors blue and white. And 2, the symbol must have the menorah and 7 stars. What's 7 stars? Theodor Herzl, he wrote a few books, and in one of his books he says, if I imagine a flag of the State of Israel, it should have 7 stars in it, representing the 7 hours in a workday, not 7 days of the week. He said a workday should have 7 hours, 7 stars. So there were over 450 submissions given in. And also, if you search on Google, you could see examples of what people thought about. I'm just going to show you the winning one. This was the winning design. We see the menorah, a modern look to it with 2 olive branches, 7 stars that Herzl was talking about. It was designed by brothers known as the Shamir brothers. Now, it was changed a little bit, or a lot of it, because if you guys are familiar with the symbol of the State of Israel, it doesn't look like that. This is now what the symbol looks like. They didn't like the modern look for the menorah. And the 2 olive branches on the side, if you guys remember, we saw pasuk on the Menorah by the Knesset from Sefer Zechariah. In Sefer Zechariah, there's a nevuah where the Navi, he has this dream of a menorah. This is actually the haftarah we'll read on Chanukah. And there's olive branches, so this is from that. Now I want you guys to look at the base. The base is not the base that we see on all ancient inscriptions and drawings, which is 3 legs. It's the base that is found in the Arch of Titus. Now, here's a fun fact I want to share. When I was in Rome, I took this wonderful, wonderful tour with a woman named Michaela Pavoncello. Look her up. She now gives virtual tours. She gave a tour of parts of Rome, and she spoke about the Jewish community there. And she told me such a great story, which this is her story, but I'm going to tell it to you. She gives tours to regular people like me, but she also gives to really, really famous people. And she said one day she was giving a tour to Sarah Netanyahu's wife. And she's part of what she does in her tour, she takes you to the Jewish Museum, which has all different artifacts and things. And she's showing Sarah Netanyahu these pictures, inscriptions of menorot found from the past. And she says, you know, Sarah, well, she called her Sarah by first name, or Mrs. Netanyahu probably. I want you to notice here that all the menorot, they have 3 legs. The only menorah that doesn't is on the Arch of Titus. Why did the state of Israel choose to pick the menorah with the base from the Arch of Titus? Why? Why are they choosing that? So she looks at her, she says, that's a good question. I'm going to speak to my husband about that. So, interesting thing. Now, I don't know what your reaction is when you see this, if it makes you happy. Well, you can see it and say, it's so beautiful that they chose that base because the Romans tried to destroy us but didn't succeed, and we're sovereign and we're strong, and we're specifically taking that symbol, was supposed to be a symbol of oppression, and we're putting it on our symbol of the state. So that could be one approach. Or you could say, if you're putting the symbol of a state, you might as well do it as authentic as possible. You know, we're connecting to a history of thousands of years. How could they not get it right? How could they not do it on 3 legs? Now, you could pick either approach, but what I will say, so now both of those approaches were given, and there were people that loved this symbol and there were people that criticized it. Now, how are the Shamir brothers reacting to this? So I loved what they said. They go, what would we rather? A drawing that was accepted and criticized, or a drawing that was rejected and praised? Okay, don't like it, but you know what? We won the contest. So that's just an interesting thing for you to know. Now I have, so that was the last one. This is really the last example one. This I think is really surprised if you've never seen this or heard of this before. The last example I want to share with you is, was the menorah inspired by nature? Many of the things we have that we build are inspired by the world of nature. And there's this plant called Hamarva Moria. If you guys look to the right, the picture on the right, you see it actually growing in the wild. And notice how much it looks like the menorah. We have the kanim on the side, and to the left is a drawing of it. And even the way the plant grows, Hashem says to make it one piece. It starts from the stem, it's one piece. And we literally see the decorations of the menorah on this plant. The flowers, the knobs. So the first time I saw this, I was blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, a menorah in nature. How cool is that? It's the coolest thing. And it actually is a great perush for a pasuk in Sefer Shemot. After Hashem gives the description for menorah, he says, and make the menorah based on what you saw on the mountain. Now, the Rashi, he says, Moshe had a hard time knowing what the menorah looked like, so God showed him a menorah in fire. He didn't really know what it looked like. Now, this plant does not grow in Israel. It grows in the Sinai. Where was Moshe when he got the Torah and he's learning all of this? He's in the Sinai desert. So, now this is just a possibility. I don't know for sure, but could it be that Moshe was familiar with this plant and he saw this plant, and when Hashem says, make the menorah, he's referring to make it similar to this plant. So I just think this is so cool. Now to conclude, so today we started out, we spoke about the Wikipedia contest for the menorah by the Knesset. Then we jumped to the Old City where we saw the golden menorah of the Temple Institute. We spoke about menorot in archaeology, mosaics, coins, inscriptions, the menorah on the Arch of Titus in Rome. the menorah and the symbol of Israel, and the menorah in nature with the marva plant. And we said, what did the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash look like? I don't know. You see how much we gathered together. Let's keep discovering, and I really want to thank you for joining, because I really believe, I know for myself this is true, that the more I learn about the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash, the more I learn about things connected to Eretz Yisrael, the more I love the Torah, the more I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at the end of the day, that's really our goal with all of these classes that the SEA runs or that anyone gives, is that we want to increase in our love of the Torah, mitzvah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So thank you for investing in that. And the more we learn, the more we read, it'll help. Now, before we go, I'd like to leave you with a challenge. Here's my challenge for you guys. Challenge question. The menorah is an ancient symbol that was represented Judaism throughout history. What about the Magen David? If you go to a store today, they're not selling Magen David. They're not selling menorah necklaces. They're selling Magen David necklaces. What about the Magen David? When did that come around? Is that the symbol? So I'm not going to answer. You look it up and you can come back to me. I want to thank you all for coming. I had a wonderful, wonderful time discovering these menorah with you, and I hope now you guys know more about the menorah. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Adele. It was great.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So happy you joined.